Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talk About It, where we discuss, as many of you know, any and all aspects of wellness to help you live your best life. I'm your host, Stephanie Powell, and joining me today is my recurring guest, Sooyong Kim, who is a healing practitioner. And I can attest to that. She's been working with me and my husband in her healing practice for many years now, more than a decade. And she's also author of the upcoming book, ImmiGrace, a guide to healing immigrant consciousness. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, Soo Young, for those who are there might be some who are new who haven't joined us these past few months where we have been talking about each of the 8 chapters of Soo Young's book. We've been here on Talk About It just about every month this year in advance of the release of her book, where she's giving us a sneak preview. She's giving us insight on each chapter. And today, everyone, I have to admit, Soo Young, I'm a little sad to say this. Today, we're discussing the last chapter. And I'm a little sad. Well, I'm excited because I love this topic and I can't wait to dive in. But a little sad because I've been enjoying our chats. But fortunately, I got your number. We'll be in touch. We'll be talking.
Yes,
But
definitely.
yes. But today, everyone, we'll be having this discussion with you on chapter 8 of Soo Young's book. The topic is on trust and surrender. I've been thinking about this ever since our last live, Soo Young,
Mhm.
this topic. And yeah, I really need some advice in this space. I really, really want us to talk about things. And I often see myself as just as an everyday individual. I'm just like anyone else out here. So likely the questions I have are the questions that other people have on these topics. But again, Soo Young, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. Well, before we get into trust and surrender, Soo Young, for those who are new to talk about it, I want you to talk a bit about the book, ImmiGrace. Again, the title is ImmiGrace, A Guide to Healing Immigrant Consciousness. Tell us generally, what is this book about?
Well, this country was built by people who came here from somewhere else, whether you came here yesterday or you came here thousands of years ago. So whenever people move to a new place, they have certain things that are going on in their lives, certain issues that come up, maybe having to fit in, maybe having to compete with other people, maybe having to show that you're good enough, all that kind of stuff. So my book is about how to address these issues that come up. And it can come up with generations of people. I mean, people might have come here hundreds of years ago, but these issues can still come up because, as you know, ancestral healing is big now. And they found out that we can inherit a lot of stuff from our ancestors.
Interesting. Both my parents were born in the United States, but not the case with all of my grandparents. And you know, Art, my husband and I, we did ancestry.com. I'm
Mhm.
not endorsing, I'm just stating facts. We did our DNA test, and on ancestry.com, you're talking about ancestral healing. And we were just curious about what are all of the ethnic components to who we are. And of course, Africa was predominant for us, but we were both all over the globe in
Yeah.
terms of, I mean, some I knew, some we both knew, some we just didn't have any idea, like, wow, okay, I'm over here, here, just about every continent. And it was just really fascinating seeing that and thinking about all of the linkages. But in addition to getting the DNA results, they have out there where you can, if people have started on a family tree, and they're a part of your DNA chain, you have access to all of these records with people that you have a DNA match. And so, oh my good, it's just like a treasure trove of information, the things that we found out. And, my maternal grandmother's from Barbados, and I actually saw the paperwork of
Mm.
when she and her siblings and her parents came over to this country and came to Ellis Island. And
Wow.
it just brought a whole different perspective in terms of how I even saw myself.
Right.
Seeing those records, it just, I don't know, it just drew a different type of connection where it's like, okay, my people are coming over, through this, and it had all of them, my grandmother, all of them listed by name, the
Yeah.
ages, everything. And
Yeah.
it just
This
really,
is
really
giving me
fascinating.
chills, Stephanie.
Yeah.
I'm just like, woo,
It,
woo.
it's just incredible. And I'm just so thankful, to have discovered it, because when we did that, we had no idea that we were accessing all of that information. But there's just so much out there. But I thought about my grandmother, that little girl,
Yes.
coming over,
Mm.
and and still carrying on, and many of them settled in Massachusetts. There's a large Barbadian community in Massachusetts, and there's a reason why, many congregate in that area. But, just picking up the traditions, and, and how those things carry on, those things are definitely a part of you, the good, and also in some aspects that which may need to be healed. So you're saying that for me, someone with my background, that your book is something that even speaks to someone like me who was born here in the United States.
Yes, definitely, because your ancestors came here from somewhere else, and you actually have the record to prove it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what are the key takeaways? I mean, when you wrote this book, and we're about to get into the last chapter, but when you wrote the book, what was your intention? What did you want people to really take away from this?
I wanted people to know that they could heal, because I believe that everyone has the capacity to heal if you decide to do it, but you have to decide to do it. And it is, it can be a very difficult journey, it can be challenging at times, but it's definitely worth it, because once you've done all the research, you've uncovered all kinds of stuff that's been going on for generations, maybe patterns that have been going on for generations, then you can take a look and say, hey, I
Mm-hmm.
don't need to continue this anymore. I mean, this is what happened to my grandmother and my great grandmother and so forth.
It's,
Why do I need to continue this?
mm-hmm.
'Cause I don't like it,
Yeah.
right?
And it's interesting how those things do get passed down.
Yes,
Even when you observe it and you're like, that's not going to be me.
right.
But then you kind of enter into a certain phase of life and you look up and it's like, there I go. I'm repeating the pattern, even though I said I wasn't going to go down that path. I knew better. How does that happen? Is that something that's in the DNA? Is it something that's encoded? Why does that happen?
I think partly it is inherited, but also because we have consciousness, and then we have the unconscious self, like the iceberg that's 70% underwater. So a lot of the stuff is underwater, and we're not really conscious of what's going on. I mean, sometimes you meet somebody and you're like, I really don't like that person. Why is that, right? I mean, you delve into it and maybe you find out some information, but sometimes it's just something that you maybe remembered from your childhood, or that person reminds you of somebody from your childhood or something, that some kind of trauma. So yeah, the unconscious is a big part of ourselves. So our challenge is to uncover that. And the way to do it is to every day take a look and see what triggers you and say, okay, what's going on over here? What's really going on over here?
Mm. That's a big question.
Yeah.
And that's something I ask myself, so young, all the time. It's like, okay, I got mad because the guy cut me off. But really, in the bigger scheme of things, big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, with all the stuff that's going on in the world, why am I allowing that to trigger me? What's really going on here? And I won't go into and divulge into the things that I might have discovered when I asked myself that question, but I have found that oftentimes it's like, oh, that reminded me of such and such and such, or it's touching a part of me where I may feel unheard, or I may feel, and so it's something that's deeper. It's not just about the guy who cut me
Right.
off on the
Right.
road,
It
and
might
so.
it might be that you feel unheard, unrespected,
Mhm,
and
mhm,
unacknowledged. Could be
mhm,
something like
mhm.
that, right?
Yes. In a world where sometimes you can feel kind of invisible,
Yes.
sometimes, you can feel a bit overlooked, or you're not the first pick for whatever reason. You don't fit a certain profile for a certain type of experience in the minds of others. And so sometimes you can feel invisible. And when you talk about healing, you said that everyone has the capacity to heal. What type of healing are we talking about?
We're talking about maybe something is really affecting you, so much so that maybe you have some kind of an illness of some kind. And if you can kind of really delve into the cause of it, because I mean, we know what the symptoms are. You don't feel good. There's a lot of stuff going on. You feel a lot of pain, all that kind of stuff. But what was really the cause of this illness? Then you can really heal it. I mean, there's been so many cases of spontaneous healing. Some people call them miracles,
Mhm,
but I believe that the person was open enough to decide to heal,
mhm,
and the intention was to heal. I mean, otherwise, I mean, there are people that I know who just constantly complain about their pain, but they don't, I mean, they just live life the same way every day, right? Constantly complaining about this and the other, and how this person is really annoying me and this other person is preventing me from doing this and such and such. So I think we have to make sure that what we're doing in the situation is something that we acknowledge, we take responsibility for,
mhm.
and we decide that we're going to look at it differently.
And so you mentioned physical healing, but we're also talking about emotional health, mental health, physical health,
Yeah.
which many contend are all connected in some way. There's,
Yeah.
let's take, for example, fibroids, and that's a condition that women have in terms of benign growths. And many doctors have said, oh, it may be excess estrogen, but many have said that there's an emotional component, that those who have kind of unreleased trauma, or those who don't feel as though they have expressed their level of creativity to the extent that somehow their creativity feels stifled, that it's that the trapped emotions of that give rise to the growth, and so there can be all kinds of medical interventions for it, to so-called get rid of them temporarily.
Yeah.
But you don't get down to, I think, what you're speaking of, the root cause, the trapped emotions and that aspect, then oftentimes they just grow right back because you
Yeah.
haven't gotten
Yes,
to the
they
root
do.
cause, and you've just kind of dealt with the symptoms of it. You're a massage therapist in part. You're a healing practitioner, as we mentioned at the top of
Mhm.
the program. And one of the things that you've done for years is massage therapy. And I've heard that people, when they've gotten massage, not in every case, but in some cases, they break out in tears, that there's like a trapped, it's something about the process of having the massage that really gets into the tissues where those emotions are trapped. And there's this emotional release from the physical, act of the massage.
Right.
Tell us, have you experienced that? Have you witnessed that
Yes.
with some of your
Many
clients?
times. Yeah, many times, because I mean, the working on the body can really release a lot of emotions and actually trauma even.
Mhm,
And for instance, I mean, in craniosacral therapy, we do what we call somato-emotional release,
mhm,
and there's certain techniques that we do which can really relive an event. I mean, not like you have to be there or anything like that, but for instance, what your body was like at the point of trauma, like say you were in a car accident, right?
mhm,
And maybe you were bracing yourself or something like that. And so we'll put the body in that same position and then release it from that. So release the trauma from that particular position. So
mhm.
there's certain techniques that we can do for that kind of thing.
It's
And I
interesting.
have witnessed a lot of people crying and all that. And I mean, some people are not, they're not being touched enough also. That's another issue in
Mm,
the culture. So,
mm-hmm.
yeah.
That's interesting. Well, I know that infants, there's a higher health rate and less mortality with infants who are
Yeah.
touched, and that's that some hospitals even have that touching program where
Mhm.
babies are just kind of held throughout the day,
Yeah,
that's an essential part of their emotional development as human beings,
definitely.
the touch. So trust and surrender. Let's get to the topic of chapter 8. I love the words
Mhm.
trust and surrender. When I thought about it, it just resonated so much with me when I just listened to those words, and when I thought about my application of that within my own life. Um, in some cases, challenge. Some days I'm better than others.
Right.
So we're going to talk about that. But, when we're talking about trust and surrender, it seems like the two go hand in hand. You could have done a chapter on trust, you could have done another chapter on surrender, but you put them together. It seems that you see the two going hand in hand. In whom or what are we trusting and surrendering?
It depends on your belief system. I mean, some people believe in God, infinite intelligence, the universe, and so forth, or maybe even somebody like Buddha or Jesus or Kuan Yin. So you have to use what you believe in
Mhm,
and use that to bring the trust, because I mean, you have to examine your belief system. Do you believe that this world is a harmful place? Do you think this place is a safe place for you? I mean, you have to recognize what your opinions are about that kind of thing also. So your spiritual growth and your belief system is very important with that respect.
okay. And so what is trusting exactly?
I think that a lot of people believe that trust is just pure blind trust. Just, okay, I'll leave this up to God and I don't have to do anything, but you still have to do your part,
Mhm,
right? I
mhm.
mean, you
Yes, you
can't just
do.
say, oh, yeah, the right people will come to my door and they'll knock on my door and, and they'll give me money or whatever.
Hmm. Doesn't work like that.
People, some people do believe that. I mean, I remember I knew somebody whose daughter had mental health issues,
Mhm,
and I mean, she didn't want to do anything about it. She didn't want to take her to a mental health professional or anything like that or get her any help. She just said, God will take care of her. And I was thinking, wait a minute, you still have to do your part because we're here, we're in this earth where things work a certain way. And
Mhm.
if you have mental health issues, you need all the help you can get.
Yes, yes. I do believe that God works through each of us.
Hmm.
And, and every day I ask to be the fullest expression that I could possibly be, to be that vessel.
Yes.
But I agree with you, Soo Young, that it takes movement. You just can't just park it, just trust and just sit. You have to take that trust, take that faith and move out. And I think that's where the magic happens, is through the movement, um, coupled with the belief in the
Mm.
faith. And
Yeah.
so when we're surrendering, so trusting is, having a belief in our higher power, having belief in the goodness that exists within the universe, within us.
Hmm.
And we trust and we believe in that. And then the surrendering part, what does that entail?
I think that's the hard part because we're all control freaks, you know? So we want things to go a certain way, but we have to remember that we don't know everything about a situation. I
Mm,
mean, just think of something maybe that happened to you, and then you thought, oh, this was such a horrible thing, but later on you found out more about it, and you think, well, this is why it happened because these other people were doing this and such and such. So I think that if we realize that we don't really know everything, we
mhm,
don't know our way around the corners and all that kind of stuff,
mhm,
then we can surrender better because we can do all we can to do whatever it is and then let it go. Wait for the seed to sprout, wait for the call,
mhm.
instead of just driving people crazy, calling every day, that kind of thing. So,
Yes. I and church I grew up in, from childhood, common phrase, and I'm sure probably a lot of churches and religions use this: let go and let God. And I
yeah,
think that it speaks to that surrendering. Once you trust, let it go. And, but, you spoke of our being control freaks.
yes, we
But,
are.
don't you think, though, so young, that we're kind of trained to be?
Oh, yeah.
We have to have a plan for everything, a
Right.
plan for this, a plan for that. And I believe in goals, but it just seems like we're just trained to um, just control, 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 control.
Right.
And some of us believe that, we have to control every single aspect of not only ourselves, but then we move on to other people trying to control other people too.
Yes. And I
Uh,
know some people who plan a trip and they'll plan like
oh,
every 15 minutes.
oh my, oh, Sue Young, in preparing for this live, you stop it. You're reading my mind. That was one of the examples that I thought about, and I see Art the Great, my husband, on the line. I'm going to tell it, Art. Sometimes when you are, going on vacation with some people, and you're right, you got to pick the right travel and vacation partners, because we like to have like a general plan,
Right.
but you want to leave space for like miracles to happen, and
Yeah.
things that you didn't
Fun.
expect. I mean, one time we were, on vacation with some, and it was just like just nagging at. Okay, what time are we going to do this? What time are we gonna, when are we, when are we, I mean, it was just so stressful. I was just like, oh, I mean, everything. everything was, I mean, down to the T. And then you felt like if it didn't hit the itinerary, like right on the minute, that,
Mhm.
there was this level of uptightness. And it's like, oh my goodness, I'm so stressed out from this. This is supposed to be a vacation,
Yeah, that
you
doesn't feel
know.
like one.
Oh my goodness. But I do like a certain level of organization. Don't get me wrong. I do.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
you gotta leave room for the divine to just come in and just, make it greater than you could have ever planned it.
yeah.
And
And some people pray for this or something better because we just don't know what the best is for us. It could be
mhm,
even better than you could even imagine.
yes, that's so true. And so oftentimes I'm learning better to trust.
Hmm.
Um, because you're right, you can't see or know everything. You just can't, and you won't. Not as a human being, you're just not. And so when things don't go according to plan, I go to my belief that everything is happening for my good. I look for the good in everything and believe that this is the best thing that's happening. This is for my good. Even if I don't see it or fully understand it right now, in time I will. And sometimes I do kind of understand that fairly immediately. And it's like, and the better thing appears almost instantaneously once I really put into practice that belief. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, see, I was supposed to go right, not left. Whew,
Hmm.
thank goodness. Or thank goodness that this car directed me in this way, because I learned that there was an accident this way, and so I'm glad that I
Exactly.
went right. Or you know
Hmm.
those kinds of small things happen. I find, so young, the more that you believe in that higher power that's always there for you. I believe the more that you have faith in that, the more you believe that, the more you surrender, the more that the magic, so to speak, or the miracles, so to speak, happen. The more you believe that. What are your thoughts?
Yes, that's for sure. And if something happens that you're not too happy about, then I think you really have to ask yourself, what am I to learn from this?
Mm.
Because if you don't learn your lesson, you know what happens, right?
It comes right back. It's
Yeah,
like,
it
you're
happens
going to
again
learn
and
this
again.
lesson eventually. Well, I'll just keep coming back until you finally get it. I had something happen to me, I'll say, in the workplace about mm, maybe a year and a half ago.
Hmm.
And we talked about it, Si Young, and um, it was a hard time for me. It was hard.
Yeah.
It was unexpected. And I was just like, what in the world is going on right now? Uh, but again, that optimism, that faith, that belief, I don't understand what's going on right now, but I trust that the best thing is happening. And it actually, I started feel once I really, really adopted that belief, I didn't surrender immediately because
Mhm.
I was kind of caught up with ego. I was like, wait a minute, what is going on? What? That ego was going.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then finally I was just like, okay, come on, give it a rest. Just let it go. Give it a rest. And trust and surrender. But also, don't expect things to just kind of magically kind of land in your. It was like, no, this is an opportunity.
Yeah.
This is an opportunity that I wouldn't have had if things just kept going all along the way I've expected it.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I changed my perception and realized the power that I was being given in this moment through this unforeseen act, it changed everything. And it led me to down a path that I just didn't see, that has enriched me so much. I almost getting choked up talking about it
Mm-hmm.
because I'm so happy.
Yeah.
And I'm looking now and I'm like, I just didn't see the blessing and I just didn't see it at the time. I thought that things are just crumbling. And
Right.
perhaps they were. Sometimes things do need to crumble in
Yeah.
order for you to really be on the path that you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And
Sometimes. Yeah.
I feel so blessed. I'm like, wow, 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 wow.
It's like
But yeah,
the
ego was going there for a minute. I was not feeling it at first.
it's
But
like
yeah, I
the
had to
phoenix
trust it.
rising from the ashes, right? After you have that big fire, and then the phoenix is there,
The
and it's
phoenix rises.
the
The phoenix
powerful
rises.
phoenix, right? So
Absolutely. So, so there is, what are the benefits? I mean, I spoke about it personally in terms of, I mean, and there are countless examples that I could speak to in my life. That was kind of a more recent one. But what are the general benefits of trusting and surrendering? Why should we do this?
I I believe that when you can do that, when you allow yourself to do it, then things will really happen magically. I mean, I just remember one time I was working in New York at the time, and I just ran into somebody on the street that I used to work with, and he said, "Hey, we have a job opening," So I ended up moving to that company at higher pay and so forth, right? So, I mean, these things just kind of happen, just
Yes.
out of the blue, as they say, out of the blue, but
Mm-hmm.
you just don't expect it, and then here you are.
Mm-hmm. We have a comment here. Once you get over your fears, the moment sometimes, once you get over your fears of the moment, sometimes it gives birth to beautiful growth opportunities. So, I mean, I think that's a really good point. Do you feel that we are constantly being kind of gently nudged by our higher power to grow, to become a better and greater version of ourselves? That's part of why we should trust and surrender, that it's a part of our evolution, it's a part of how we should be growing spiritually.
Yes, for sure. I mean, I know it's scary at times. Well, it's scary a lot, not just at
Is
times.
it is.
But I mean, maybe doing things that we're not used to doing. I mean, some people have a really hard time speaking in public. I mean, they fear it worse than death, from what I've heard.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you face it, and then you do it. I mean, you say, okay, I'm not going to let this stop me, right? And maybe you practice, and you speak to some mentors, or you speak to some people.
You're talking about me, Sooyong. I was
Oh
that person.
yeah.
I I was so painfully shy. I remember being I had to have been about 3 or 4, given where I was living at the time. And it was the holiday season. We were at church and I was in our Christmas play. I was in the Christmas play with the other kids, and I had a speaking part.
Mhm.
And rather than speaking at the time that I was supposed to, I completely turned my back to the
Oh no.
didn't say a word. And my parents were there in the front. And they were like, Stephanie, you gotta turn around now. You gotta
Ugh.
see Aunt Stephanie. and I just turned my back, and I just, I just wasn't having it. But I was just so shy.
Mm.
But I looked back, and but then later on, I became that person that just kind of pushed through it. I would volunteer to be in the school play, and I would
Mm.
volunteer to have a career in communications, and I would volunteer to be a university professor where I had to give lectures every day, and I would just volunteer to do these things that didn't necessarily come naturally to me, or
Mm.
it kind of scared me. I don't know why. That might be some, I don't know, there might be some ancestral healing
Oh, for
related
sure.
to that. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because I mean, when you think about women the way they were among our ancestors, I mean, they pretty much were subdued, and they weren't allowed to come into their power or given choices.
Hmm.
So we're kind of on the forefront now to changing that paradigm.
Yes, yes, indeed. So, is there a certain level in taking myself for as an example? Is there a certain level of risk involved in trusting and surrendering? I mean, so many of us are, we avoid risk
Right.
of any kind. I'm wired a bit differently, where it's like, no, I need to take some calculated risk I because I believe in my growth and development, and I have to get outside of that comfort zone to get to the next level. So I think there's something kind of, I don't know, it's just the way I'm wired, but I know a lot of people, they don't do that necessarily. Does it involve some risk taking? And if so, I mean, what do you advise to those of us who are risk averse? We just avoid risk. What do you advise to those people?
The universe is always on our side, and the problem is that we kind of get in the way because we have doubts. That's one thing. We start worrying. We're like, oh, what if this doesn't happen, and blah blah blah. The whole worry thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just create this forcing current, and then it just creates all this resistance. But if you can really make a clear um, decision to trust in the universe, and I'm not saying that you need to trust certain people, because now
Mm-hmm.
if you know a certain type of person that has really screwed you over or whatever, I mean, I would not go around trusting that kind of person again. Yeah, I mean, you know what I mean? I mean,
Yes, I know. And I was going to get to that because I was going to talk about the people who've been hurt.
yeah,
There are many of us who've been hurt by people. Some people very close to us. Some people have been hurt by friends, relatives, and we have trust issues. Once you've
yeah.
been hurt, and you want to protect your heart. What do you do when you're afraid? Church. Are you saying people in the church can hurt you too? Or
Oh, yeah, of
are you
course.
saying you should lean on the church to get through it? You know what? And our guest here is telling it. Yeah, and that perhaps is the most painful. When you
I would be careful. I would
experience
be
that
careful.
pain
Yeah.
from church, so many of my friends, we've talked about it, where they've experienced that in church. I mean, they're devout, they go, they participate, and just human stuff happens.
Sure.
They're talked about, and it's very painful. I mean, some have moved to other churches as a result of
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And
I
it's
would say be careful of putting anyone on a pedestal, because we're all human
Mhm,
beings. So even people who have a lot of power in the church or whatever, religion or any organization,
mhm,
they're all fallible. I mean, they're human beings. I mean, they can. So, I mean, if you want to trust somebody, put your trust in God or the universe or, whatever, a higher power.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So that's what we're talking about. And I'm so glad you made that distinction, Sooyong. Trusting in source, the creator and
Yeah.
God, and not necessarily just saying, oh, I'm gonna just trust and surrender to just people, particularly
Right.
those who you don't know them or they don't have a good track record.
Mhm.
Yes, there you go. God says trust in him, not anyone else. So yes, it's about going within. So how do we acquire? I mean, we talked about we're raised to trust in our parents. We trust in the church. We trust in the government, lawmakers. We trust, 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 trust. We're raised to trust all of these people, but I don't think we're necessarily trained to trust in ourselves. I can't think of any particular training or anything that says, oh, here's a training or here's something where you learn to trust in yourself.
Right.
Um, how do we go about doing that? And sometimes when we have not made good choices, and hey, I'm one. I haven't made some of the best choices in my life. I can raise my hand.
Yeah.
Not
We
every
all can.
choice I've made has been a good choice, and sometimes it's had certain circumstances that left me saying, "Can I trust myself?" you know So, what do we do to kind of develop that sense of trusting in oneself and trusting in a higher power? I mean, how do we go about doing that?
Well, one of the things that we can develop is to understand when we're talking to our inner wisdom or our ego. We had talked about this before. So, I mean, I think you kind of know when the ego is acting out and just going, I want this and I want that and I want candy or whatever. And the inner wisdom is there kind of saying, okay, well, maybe that's not the best idea at this time.
Mm-hmm,
So you kind of have to make that distinction and understand when it is your inner wisdom speaking, or God, or whoever it is that you are working with.
mm-hmm.
So the more you work with it, the better you become at it, and so it's important to have a spiritual practice.
I think that's what our guest is saying here. There's no real training for
Mhm.
it, for trusting in yourself, that God gave us that ability to make good choices and decisions. And I think you're right. It's kind of knowing when it's ego
Yeah.
and knowing when it's our higher power that's directing, that's ordering our steps.
Right.
So, I mean, is there anything that we can do, meditation or any practices that can help get us in a better state for that, for trusting and surrendering? Any
Sure.
practices?
Sure. Meditation, prayer, and also healing, because you want to release all the restrictions the that are going on, and as I said before, ego acting out, and you want to release all that stuff so that there's a clear channel that's flowing.
hmm You know, there's some days, so young, where you may not feel like it. It's like okay, I need to be about taking care of me. I need to be about healing. It's not going to just happen. I need to be intentional about it. There are things that I need to do. What happens? I mean, and we're here in this holiday season. It's kind of, that could be a season that's hard for some people.
Yeah.
Some people
Yes.
kind of go through that seasonal depression, or, they've experienced loss, and, it just kind of puts them in a saddened state. What are some things that we can do to just kind of get out of it when we just don't feel like it? We're just not in the mood. We don't feel like it. Um, and you don't want to wait until we hit rock bottom
Right.
emotionally. You don't want to wait until you just are so defeated that you just get so tired of being tired. What do you recommend to kind of give ourselves a boost to just say, hey, okay, it's time to get it together. It's time to be on this healing path. It's time.
I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with taking a break and resting and all that, because especially at this time of year, we really need to rest
Mm-hmm.
because there is just so much going on. And I mean, just going food shopping, right? I mean,
Yes, yes,
why is
that can be.
everybody going to Trader Joe's, right? I mean, you
Yes.
supposed to find parking and all that kind of stuff. So
Hmm.
just dealing with that, I mean, you kind of have to give yourself a break and get some good rest.
Hmm.
And I mean, it doesn't, since time doesn't really exist, right? I mean, it doesn't really matter if you take like a month off or whatever.
Hmm.
But just recognize, I mean, as I was saying earlier, if you notice that you're being triggered by something, just say, okay, well, just say, okay, what's that about? And then just leave it at that, and
Hmm.
then probably later on, the answer will come to you.
Would you encourage Sooyong for us to be mindful of the the activity or the people or the influences that we allow? I know sometimes I'll see a phone call and I'm like, I'm just not in the mood for, I just
Mhm.
I don't feel like I have that energetic strength
Right, right.
to kind of deal with all of that right now, you
Yeah,
know.
just let
And
it go. I mean, you can talk to that person later, maybe after the holidays or something, who knows.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But
And
don't feel
so
obligated to do anything really. I mean,
mhm.
maybe you agree to make dinner or whatever, but then beyond that, you don't have to really go overboard. You know how some people they're like, oh, I got to make everybody feel comfortable, and I got to make like 10 different kinds of food, and all. Hey, it's really not worth it, right? I mean,
Mm,
just make the minimum or whatever, and just welcome everyone. They'll be fine.
yes, yes. But I do find that the type of energy that you allow around yourself, it matters. It makes a difference. I mean, I can feel the difference when I've allowed certain energetic types
Yes.
around,
Yeah.
and I can feel how it affects my energy. And I could tell where, okay, I need to make a shift. I need to kind of, you know, put that
Yeah.
on
I
pause,
mean,
or, just
those
allow
kinds of
more
people.
positivity, or,
Yeah. You can
certain.
reduce your exposure there. I mean, you don't. I mean, you don't have to get together with that person as much as you have
Hmm.
been. Maybe
Hmm.
once every couple of months or something. Maybe go to a movie so you don't have to talk much. Yeah. I mean, there are ways of dealing with this, but some. I mean, I have said goodbye to friends over the years
Hmm.
because of
Hmm.
the same issue.
Yes, yes. Well, Sue Young, I appreciate our chats here. Um, Trust and surrender, I think, is something that we need to the extent possible, put it into practice every single day. Would you
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
every day? We need to be mindful about that, and be mindful about what we're trusting and surrendering to,
Yeah.
and making sure it's
Not
we're
just to
trusting
anybody.
the right source. But yeah, it's something that we need to put into practice every day. Again, I want to encourage everyone, go to Sooyong's website, Sooyong Kim, Sooyong Kim, Kim.com, SooyongKim.com, where you can learn all about her book, ImmiGrace, A Guide to Healing Immigrant Consciousness. There's a write up on the book and each of the 8 chapters that we've discussed this year. There's a description of the chapters. There are the video shorts that we have out on YouTube. And we have the recordings of each of these lives that we've had together, Sooyong. All of that's out on your website to prep us for when the book actually comes. And so you have to go to the website as well and to check our social media for when we tell you when the book is being released. And you will get the heads up before the rest of the world. So tune in, check back. We're going to keep you posted on when this book, ImmiGrace, A Guide to Healing Immigrant Consciousness, will be hitting bookshelves. And we expect you all to be among the first people to go and get it. But you have the sneak preview. We appreciate all of you. I want to give a shout out, Sooyong, to our Gloria Hernandez, who is on staff with mine and my husband's company, ASP Management, who has put together Sooyong's website. She is our creative director. She is just a wealth of creativity. She does the web design. She does the social media assets. She does, all of the things that we have put in place to market. And Sooyong, this has been a real pleasure for Gloria to work with you. It's been a pleasure for me and for Art and our company to work with you with this book. We wish you God's blessings with this because we know your book is going to be just a beacon of light to promote healing to people around the world. And we feel very privileged to be a part of this. So thank you for entrusting us with something so precious to you. I feel very, very honored. Thank you so much. And thank you, Talk About It family, for tuning in. Again, all of that great material is out there. Stay tuned for when the book comes. So young. I can't believe
Thanks so much, Stephanie.
no. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
We'll be in touch, Soo Young. Okay. Bye,
Right.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you for watching, and be sure to subscribe to our Talk About It YouTube channel and turn on notifications. Also, check us out on our social media. Hope to see you next time.